If you want to be more productive, it's very important to understand the stacking of function. I'm going to share with you some unique strategies about how to accomplish more by describing to you my podcast and my membership site structure, which I use to test ideas, to convey information or curate information that I have found valuable over the years. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. So if you're a high-income professional, high-net-worth individual, your time is worth more than you can imagine. So we have a calculation called the every hour rate, where you take all the money you earn, passive or active income, and you divide it by the total number of hours in the day. That means 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. And that's going to give you a dollar amount. If that dollar amount is $12, $20, $25 an hour, then you can't afford to be screwing around trying a bunch of different things and not being confident that you're going to get the results. So there's a concept called stacking a function that allows you to do an activity once and profit from it many times. So I'm going to give you two ideas. So I cleared some land. I have a podcast called Prosperity Homestead that talks about the management of homes and making your land more high utility value. And again, it's the same audience, high income professionals, not entrepreneurs, high net worth individuals, except the caveat is that they own property. Some of them own a lot of real estate in their property developers. Some of them own rentals, and some of them just simply own a house with some acreage. So I was clearing some land out, and I had a 25-ton excavator on my property that was going to remove these trees that kept falling over on my house and kept falling over in the yard. They were going to remove these trees, and then they were going to do some earthwork activities in order to regrade the backyard. Now, in your lifetime, how many times do you have a 25-ton excavator in your backyard? So for most people, it's never. However, my audience is interested in improving the aesthetics of their home, which I am not an expert in, but they're interested in solving erosion problems, increasing the value of their land, reducing liability and risk, and clearing the trees on your property, especially if you have really old trees, is a good thing to do. You really shouldn't have a tree taller than your house within the distance where if that tree fell over, it'd land on your house. It just doesn't make any sense. You can have the tree removed and put 2 new trees there if you want. But here's my point. There are going to be certain activities in your life, certain experiences in your life that you're only going to have once in a lifetime. If you don't get a photograph, if you don't get a video, if you don't have any commentary, if you don't share that experience, then you've lost it. You can't go back in time and take videos of a 25-ton excavator in your backyard. Now, I took about 100 hours of video. Some of that video became podcasts. Some of it became content for my newsletter. Some of it became just stories that we used in other platforms. But I have that physical evidence that I was involved in a large project. Because if I'm offering to homeowners the insights about project management in the form of land management strategies, again, that's also stacking a function we can talk about here in a second. I need to be able to prove to them that I've actually done projects. So I've actually done projects where we're dropping $1 million storage units into data centers all across the United States for a Fortune 100 bank. I've done projects where of building houses or helping a developer plan out a community. I've helped with like a lot of different things, not always as the primary. Sometimes I'm the helper. I'm not in charge of the job. But again, I can't go back in time and collect hard evidence that I've had these experiences. So as I go, I use my newsletters to collect those experiences. So it's the story about the story about the dump truck that almost fell down the hill. So we bring in soil. We got this excavator out there, and this dump truck wouldn't cooperate with the excavator operator, who knew there were soft spots in this particular hill, and backed his truck down anyway, went a little bit too fast, and almost rolled a tandem dump truck down a hill. Well, there's lessons about that. I have video of this happening. I have photographs of this happening. Now, you can take the video, you can take the photographs and never use them. I took 100 hours of video and photo and all this other stuff, audio programs. I didn't use it all. But again, if I'm in a position where I have an audience, I can simply go to the archive, extract from the archive, and have a new product. I could have a new example. I could have a new case study. Now, when I talk about project management stacking, my core skills is risk management, project management, and the understanding of how systems work. So process optimization. I apply that core skill in my Prosperity Homestead newsletter to the management of land, but I apply that core skill in this newsletter inside strategic relations as far as how to design your life, how to design or accomplish large projects. Every project, and there's tenets. Every project has a plan, has a mission statement. It has some kind of resource list. It has some kind of plan that includes deliverables. It has some kind of focus, such as a schedule, to make sure that you get the project done on time. And then projects roll up into portfolios. Can you see how you can take a framework concept, layer on top of it audience-specific information, and now present yourself to that audience with credibility, because over time you've collected what I call artifacts that demonstrate your value. I have a library of every employer review, every client review and testimonial, and narratives of the different types of problems and solutions that we implement there. Some of these become reports that I've sold or I've used to get in the door for client activity. Some of these things are what back out my resume or for example, or I put them in a proposal. These become stories that I can use to get customers' attention. But again, I don't have to sit down and remember any of this stuff because I have work journals. I have project portfolios. Basically, if I solve a problem, the first page is kind of what's the problem? What's the desired outcome? And then what is the activity we do to solve it? You can turn that into a case study. You can turn that into a training program. The reason I share this with you is because many of the folks who are on the Inside Strategic Relations newsletter are looking to improve their communication skills, their influence, and they're looking for that residual income. And what I found is a great residual income platform that feeds consulting services, it feeds trade services if you own a services company, is that customer story. But again, that story is more accurate, it's more relevant, and it's more meaningful to the person who receives it if you collect it at the time of activity. See, I've sat down with clients before and I said, well, tell me about the 3 greatest achievements you've had. Because those are three good narratives. And they're just banging their head and they're just not sure. And then so we get 3. It's like pulling teeth. I have to beat it out of them. We get 3, and then we're working through the 3, working on the narrative and the language associated with the individuals they want to influence, their target customers. And then just a side note, we'll be sitting at lunch or something and the client will say, oh, there's this time I did such and such. And it's the perfect story. It illustrates the problem of the client and how this person was the hero and came in and solved the problem and how it made the client look good. And it had emotional appeal. It had everything I couldn't beat out of the person for the 3 initial stories. But again, if they didn't go through the exercises that we do to get the 3 initial stories, they wouldn't have had the information. So again, we're stacking function. We're keeping an end of the day journal that reviews your successes. That builds your self-esteem. It builds your confidence. It gives you something to fall back upon if you've had a bad year. But that also gives you artifacts and fodder that you can use in the future for stories, for marketing materials, for presenting yourself. Maybe you have a speech where you want to influence people and you've got the perfect story and you don't have all the details, but you go back in your journal and you can extract it from there. You talk about the time so I mentioned the time I met Donald Trump. So I went to a Tony Robbins event. I paid extra money to go to the VIP sessions. I met Donald Trump. I got to shake his hand. This is all before he was president. And I had a challenge with debt at the time because I had a business during the .com and it failed for more reasons. In hindsight, it was my naivety that caused it to fail, my stubbornness that caused me to end up with a lot of debt. But I got to talk with Donald Trump and he told me the story. He told it from stage, but he kind of reminded me about it when I met him, that having $250,000 in debt's not a big deal. He had billions of dollars in debt. See, I don't have any pictures of that. I don't have, you don't want to irritate people with selfies and stuff, but I don't have solid evidence showing me and this famous person. There's no way at the time I would have known he'd become president. There's no way at the time that he had any street value to my consulting or anything like that. But how long does it really take to take a picture? If you ever do a speech to an audience, how long does it take to have somebody take a few pictures, to record your speech, and to ultimately maybe have a video of you speaking to the audience? Doesn't take very long at all. But again, you're building these artifacts, you're organizing the information in such a way that you can retrieve it in the future, and now you've got a library of materials to work with. I've got thousands of articles, special reports, photographs, videos, everything. I'm never going to use it all. But it's not wasted time because I'm using it right now in the podcast. No, but basically if a client comes along and says, hey, I'd like to work with you on a joint venture and I need this, draw from your experiences and give us some information so we can introduce you. I can pull out specific information. I can pull out specific resources. I can provide pictures. I have evidence. So I have met famous people. There's some of them on the website and some not so famous people, but very successful people. And I've made sure that we got a picture together. Now, this benefits them as much as it benefits you because, again, it reinforces their prominence in a community, but it doesn't take much time. So the takeaway of what I'm sharing with you right now is take pictures, take notes, reflect on your successes, reflect on your failures. Anytime you've had a failure, by the way, think about this. How many listeners have lost $500,000 trying to learn how to get a business right? I have, and I can share that experience, the lessons learned. And if you want a 90-minute presentation, I've got enough evidence to show you 90 minutes. If you want a 3-day training seminar, I've got enough lessons learned for a 3-day seminar. Think about how valuable that is after you retire and if you go into consulting, for example. Think about how valuable it is when you're up for a promotion and even over the last year, you can clearly describe the 3 or 4 successes you've had, the 2 or 3 failures you've had, and how you overcame those and the lessons you've learned. Hey, if your employer doesn't give you the money you're looking for, those are great talking points to open the door to an executive level position. Have you ever noticed how executives have stories? Well, they don't just make these stories up. They've cultivated these stories as narratives, and they have them on hand because they've documented them, they've journaled them, they've talked about them multiple times. And now when someone says, hey, can your business handle such and such? Well, tell me a little bit about your situation. Tell me about the outcomes you're looking for. Great. This looks a little bit like a project we did 3 years ago. Would you like to hear some of the solutions that we introduced there so that we can start moving towards the solutions you're looking for here? They'll say yes. You'll be able to speak with confidence. You'll be able to speak and focus. But again, this is stacking a function. This is layering upon layer the implementation of best practices, the journaling of outcomes, the reflection on lessons learned at the end of projects. You'll start identifying methodologies that work consistently. You'll start identifying the challenges that clients face. And then you're going to have a library of materials that make your life easier. If you have to do an impromptu inspirational speech, you're going to have jokes that you've already thought about that are relevant to the common audience you deal with. You're going to have stories that are meaningful and uplifting. You're going to have more context and value to the audiences that you serve. And that's really a good relationship element. But you didn't have to do any extra work. That's my biggest takeaway. When you stack function, when you do one thing that solves many problems, or you do one thing and you collect evidence about that one thing because you may have to demonstrate that you've made that success in the past, you're really saving time. You're really accomplishing more. You're really being a more effective user of resources. And because your time is so valuable, you're actually multiplying that value by building out kind of a back end. I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. If you have questions about how to organize these resources and archives, how to monetize these resources and archives, how to use them to gain influence, whether it's a proposal process or it's even just social influence, reach out to us at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. You don't need to have a bunch of newsletters that I do. That's just the approach that I take. But I've actually got journals and notes about interviews I've done in the past with successful individuals, and I can share a whole catalog of useful and valuable insights because I did the homework already. I want to thank you for listening. I'm here to help you transform business relationships into profits guaranteed.